Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Chirp's Backyard. Tonight, we are here to learn a bit about owls, ominous owls. And it is my great pleasure to be able to introduce from our local Big Bear Alpine Zoo, which I believe is only one of 2 alpine zoos in the entire country. Hopefully you've had a chance to go view the new home in Moonridge. It's something we're very proud of. But I would like to introduce to you Christy McGiveron, who is the lead keeper, as well as Hailey Miller, who is also a keeper, and Beth Cako, who is a docent. And last but not least, maybe you can hear, is it him or a her? Him. A him. You might be able to hear him. Hooty, the great horned owl, who we'll be introduced to in just a minute. So with that, please join me in welcoming our owl guests.
All right, how's everybody doing? Good? Okay, well, I'm going to first tell you there's 2 families of owls. They're either in the Strigidae family, which encompasses most of the owls, and then the Titonidae family, which is mostly just barn owls. So those are the 2 families, and there's over 200 species of owls that you can find out there worldwide, and 19 of those species live in the United States and Canada, and we are privileged to have at least 7 to 10 of those species living up here locally in Big Bear. At the zoo, we currently only have 3 of the species. We've had up to 7 living at the zoo in the past few years, but I'm going to go get my friend Hooty there and bring him out so you guys can see him, and you'll get up close and personal on Owl Talk. All right, this is Hooty, and Hooty is a great horned owl, which is one of the main species that we have up here in Big Bear, and they are pretty much found clear across North America. He's one of the 3 largest owls that you'll find. I brought a friend down there that's sitting, that's a snowy owl, that's this, another large, one of the large ones that you'd find, not up here, but it's one of the large owls. What do you see? He always sees things I don't see, so he's gonna look around and start talking here soon. But great horned owls, I like to talk about them because they're really cool and they are built really well for nighttime living. And we're going to start at the top of Hooty here. And if you notice these little tufts on top of his head, a lot of people think that those are ears or horns. Exactly. But they are just feather tufts. And those help him to camouflage in, which Beth, go ahead, you can bring it over. If you look at their feather coloring, when he's sitting up in a tree, you can kind of see how he just kind of blends in to the back with the bark. And what they will do is they will sit out during the daytime and try to hide in the tree and put those little horns up and sit really tight. And most people walk by and never even notice that they're there. So you'll pass them by when you're out hiking and not even see them. Now he does have control of those little horns. He can put them up or down depending on his mood. But a lot of people do think they're ears. In fact, they are not though. His ears are located right behind his eyes. And they're pretty cool because they are big holes about the size of a dime, and they are asymmetrical. So his right ear is up high, and his left ear is down low. And this helps him to pinpoint where sounds are coming from so that he can go out and go hunting and know exactly where the noises are coming from to be able to go. Also, a really cool fact with that, if you see that mask or the line around his face, that's his facial disc, and that acts like your earlobes. Exactly. So when sounds hit that, it trickles it back into the ear opening and again helps him to pinpoint where sounds are coming from so he can hunt in pure darkness and be able to find food for himself. Hey, look this way. What are you doing? You gonna talk? Want to talk in there? Yeah. Do you want to just take over? One cool thing is that right now in October is their courting season, so that's why he is very, very vocal tonight. Last night we had him out for our twilight tours that we're doing, and he had found himself a girlfriend across the street, and she kept hooting back to him, so they were having quite a little talking fest. Now with his eyes, he's got really cool eyes. His eyes are really big, and they say if you had eyes in relation or in that size compared to your body to his, you would actually have eyes that weigh about 5 pounds each, and they would be kind of like the size of a baseball. So you'd have 10 pounds of eyes you'd be trying to hold up on your head. That wouldn't look good for us, but it does work very well for him. Now his eyes are pretty cool because they have 3 eyelids. He has a top lid and a bottom lid, one for blinking, one for sleeping, and then he has a nictitating membrane that comes across to help keep food and bugs and debris out of his eyes when he's hunting. And his eyes have gotten so big over time to gather in the light and to be able to hunt at nighttime that they are fixed in the socket. Like, you guys can hold your head straight and look left, look right, look up, look down without moving. He can't do that. He has to be able to turn his head in whichever direction he wants to see, which you'll see him doing quite frequently here with all the noises he's hearing. Hi, what do you see? Something over there, it's a tow truck. But because they're fixed, he has to move his head, and they can turn their head 270 degrees, which is quite a bit farther than we can. Most of us on a good day can go to our shoulder. He can go to his shoulder, directly behind him, and over to the following shoulder. And then they do bring it back around so quickly, by the time you blink, it looks kind of like they went in a complete circle. And we used to tease people and say that's how we used to catch owls, is that we'd go around and around till they got dizzy, and then we could catch them. But not true. Now, with his hearing that we were talking about, he hears so well. He can hear a mouse stepping on a twig at over half a mile away. So he hears very well. And when we're doing talks like this with him, it's kind of like a concert in his ears, but he's learned to adjust to it. I always say that it's much like my children at home. He's learned to tune me out. So we talked about his ears. We talked about his eyes being really good. A thing that's also kind of fun, if you want to know if a bird, an owl in particular, is diurnal, which is daytime hunter, or nocturnal, or crepuscular, which is a twilight hunter, you can kind of tell it by their eyes. Yellow eyes typically mean that they're a daytime hunter. If they have really dark orange eyes, that's usually for crepuscular. And then if they have really dark brown or black eyes, that means they're strictly nocturnal, so they're only going to be out at night. And having those really dark eyes help them to camouflage into the night so that predator or prey items can't see them coming. Now, one of the best features that I think he has is his silent flight. On the edge of his feathers here, he has a little fringing, and that allows the air to pass right through. And he also has much softer feathers than bird feathers, which we have some up here. You guys are welcome to come see when we're done. Hawk feathers are a little more stiff, and they make a lot of noise when they're flying, so you can kind of hear them when they're going overhead. Owls make absolutely no sound when they're flying, which helps them to hunt. And they are not very fast flyers, so they need to be kind of quiet and stealthy to be able to do that. When they are hunting, what they'll typically do is they will sit up in a tree or on a telephone pole, and they will just kind of watch and listen below, and when they see something, they'll just glide out of the tree quietly, go down and grab a hold of it. His top speed is about 45 miles an hour, which sounds pretty good, but in the bird world, that's pretty slow, because you have hawks and eagles that can go in a dive up to 100 miles an hour, and then you have the peregrine falcon, which can go up to 200 miles an hour, so 45 isn't really that fast, but it gets the job done for him. He likes to, like I said, just kind of glide out, and I don't know if you guys can see his feet here. He has zygodactyl feet, which means they have 2 toes in front and 2 toes in back, which gives him a really powerful grip. So once he has gone down and grabbed a hold of something and locks in, it's pretty much not going to go anywhere from him. And you also can see that he has fully feathered feet there, and that's to help them, the ones that live in the cold weather, and it also helps protect their toes if the animal that they're going after tends to go after them and bite them back. That helps to protect them, and it helps them to feel different things, like if something's crawling across them. What do you see? Do you have a visitor up there? That'd be kind of cool if someone came to see you. Oh, it's cold. I can see his breath. What do you see? Another feature is that they are very light. Everyone always asks how much he weighs, and he is only about 2.5 pounds. So he's a very light bird, and that is because their bones are hollow, which help to keep them light for flying. And I didn't have an owl wing to bring you, but we have a pelican wing that if you check and look inside there, they have like a honeycomb in there. So it's not a full solid bone. It's just made very light and helps keep them able to fly around and not have to be a very heavy bird. Yes, that's a pelican. Someone found that actually on the lake and brought it to us. And we thought it was kind of cool to you never find a fully intact wing like that. Now, these guys, as far as breeding, like I was saying that in October they start courting and making this noise to find a mate. They typically will find a mate and they stay together forever, usually. If something should happen to their mate, they will go out and find another mate to continue on breeding. But they typically will stay together. And the way you can tell the difference between the males and the females when you see birds of prey out there is by their size. The females are going to be at least 1/3 larger than the males, so that kind of gives it away. And the male typically weighs anywhere from about 2 to 3.5 pounds, and a female can be anywhere from like 3.5 pounds up to 5 pounds. So we have a picture right there of kind of the size difference. That's our male and our female that live at the zoo, so you can kind of see their, do I have it right? Yeah, how big the female is compared to him. And in the relationship of owls, the female being that she's bigger, she's the one that sits on the nest and protects the eggs and the babies, so she needs to be a little bigger and bulkier to do that. And the male being a little bit smaller, it makes him a little faster and more maneuverable. He goes out and gets the food and brings it back to feed the family. Now, these guys, once they start courting and pick out their mate, great horned owls typically will start laying their eggs in January. Most other owls typically wait till about February or March. And then they will sit on their eggs. Great horned owls usually have 2 to 3 eggs. Barn owls can have 16 to 20 eggs in their clutch. But these guys typically are 2 to 3. And once they lay their eggs, they'll start incubating them, and they'll sit on them for about 37 days or so until they start to hatch. And because they laid them at different increments, the first one hatched is usually going to be the strongest and get the most food from the parents, so they usually have a little better chance of surviving. And the younger ones, if there's enough food to go around, they will sometimes make it, but more than often not. It's usually the oldest one that will survive. And they say that only 1 out of every 10 owls born make it to their first year of life, because it's really hard out there in the world on these guys. What are you doing? Oh, you're showing him your wingspan. He does have a very impressive wingspan, which is about 4 feet, if you'll get it back up there. Thank you, buddy. And you'll notice you didn't hear any noise, no flapping sounds. So when I was talking about them hunting and coming down so quietly, I don't know if you've ever heard a hawk fly over. You can actually hear the beats of the wings on the hawk as they're going by. But these guys, yeah, make absolutely no noise, which again is helpful so that they can just kind of glide down and get a hold of their prey. And as far as their prey, they're going to eat anything from the size of a mouse all the way up to the size of a rabbit, and sometimes even skunks. And birds of prey do not have a sense of smell, so it comes in very handy if you're going to eat a skunk to not be able to smell it. But they will eat the whole entire animal. They will eat all the fur, all the bones. They consume the whole thing, and then the next day before they can eat again, they will cast up what's called a pellet. And inside these pellets are all the parts that their body didn't digest. And so schools actually collect these and do projects with the kids, because you can take all the bones out and put them kind of back together and recreate what they had for lunch the day before. Scientists go out and collect them because it also helps them to see what type of animals are prevalent in certain areas that are being eaten. So it's a good way to know things like that. And we did bring some of those too. We brought some eagle ones and some owl ones just so you could see the different sizes of what they cast out. Did you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, we can go into some vocalizations.
Oh, there you go.
So
Hooty's doing his own.
He was definitely doing some great ones. We just wanted to give a little bit of variety for you guys, because owls will do their vocalizations for courting or just for singing or for communication. So here is a barking owl. And then here is a northern saw-whet owl. He's competing with them. And then here we have a Blackiston's owl, which is actually the largest owl of the world. It can weigh up to 9 pounds and has a wingspan from 5'10" to 6'3". So it's basically eagle size, but these are only in Russia, northeastern China, and Japan. So here's their vocalization. And then in comparison, we have the elf owl, which is the smallest owl, which it's only about 0.08 of a pound, and then it's only 6 inches tall with a 13-inch wingspan. Here is their vocalization.
He doesn't
He's not sure what to think about that. The elf owls are usually in Southeast Asia. Yeah.
We do have little pygmy owls up here, though, which I'd heard we had them, but I'd never seen them. And we had one brought in for rehab last year that was hit by a car. And he made it. We got him through it and got him back out there and released him down on the 330 where he was found. But I had never seen one up here, and that was pretty cool because I'd heard about them, but we never got to actually see one come in. We've had the spotted owls come in. We've had the long-eared owls come in. So it's nice to see, well, their circumstances that they come in aren't always fun, but it's nice to be able to get to see what we do have up here and get to help get them back out there, because that's our main goal at the zoo, is to rehab and release them back out where they came from. In fact, with Hooty, his story on why he is with us is that he came in as a baby, and we raised him up. We didn't do too much attention because with owls, they imprint really easily if you get them too young. So we tried to keep him at a distance and use puppets and try not to, do too much hands-on with him other than just feeding him and cleaning him. And we had him in our big flight cage, and we introduced him to live prey. He was hunting and catching food nice. We were pretty sure he was ready to go. So we found a really nice remote area close to where he came from, released him, thought everything was good, and then we started getting calls around town and hearing about things about people saying there was an owl in the village, or an owl at the ski resort, or an owl over here that was coming down around people and looking for food. And we're like, that's unusual for an owl. And so the last call we got was at Snow Summit, and they said it was sitting on the banister and like pretty much begging for food from people. And so we went out there and caught it up and brought it back, and we're pretty sure that it was Hooty, because he has one little pupil that's a little bit wonky from where he was hit when he was a baby. So we're pretty sure that that was him. So we decided, okay, you obviously aren't ready to be in the wild, so you're going to get to stay at the zoo and earn your keep. So now he's part of our education team, and he gets to come out and do meet and greets and different shows, which we're pretty proud of because we enjoy having him with us. And he's quite the talker. Yes, you are. You guys can see what he's doing with his little throat patch there. There's a couple reasons that they do that. One is if it was a really hot day, the heat would be making him do that to cool himself down, because it's a lot like our dogs. They can't sweat. So dogs will pant to cool themselves. So that's kind of what he's doing. His reason for doing it right now is because he's a little nervous because we're out here at night. We don't normally we haven't had him out in probably a year. So it's his first time out in a while, and there's lots of bright lights and noises going around. So he's just a little, that'd be like you tapping your feet or twiddling your thumb. It's just a little bit of a nervous energy that he'll do. See, now his horns are down. Remember I was telling you he has control of those. Right now he's got his horns down. He doesn't feel he needs to camouflage in and hide, so that's good.
So just to add on nests, so here on the presentation we have a burrowing owl, and they will actually steal burrows of other animals. They don't actually dig it themselves. They will make adjustments with their talons, but they don't dig them absolutely themselves. Here we have a western screech owl that is in just a tree hollow, so they'll take tree hollows and use that for their advantage. Here we have great horned owls that are on probably a raven nest or an eagle nest, because they will steal nests from other birds. And then even the elf owl will steal woodpecker holes. So they will live in woodpecker holes. They're also known to live in cacti and things like that. Back to add to forest size, here's that picture again, just so you guys can see, for the male being a third the size of the female. And boreal owls, even the females are twice as large as the males. So that was an interesting fact. And not always for camouflage do they have their ear tufts. This is a mottled, no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a pearl-spotted owlet with false eyes on the back of its head. So this helps them camouflage themselves from predators and other things like that.
Yeah, and when these guys are born, they grow so rapidly. So when they hatch, like I was saying, that they kind of hatch 2 days apart, so you have a bigger one, but they grow so quick. By 3 months old, they are this big, but they are fuzzy like that with all the white down on them. And then they're able to leave the nest at a very, very young age. Typically, by 3 months, they've got most of their feathers in and are ready to go. Other birds take a little bit longer to get all their feathers and be able to go, but then they'll branch out and they'll start, which is a good thing about talk about branching, because every year we get a lot of phone calls about baby birds that fall out of their nests, and people are always concerned of what to do with them when they see them. And that's a stage that they go through, whether they're a bird of prey or a songbird, that once it's kind of like our kids when they start learning to walk. They get up, they fall down, they get up, they fall down until their legs are strong to take off running. With these guys, they start getting those feathers in, they'll start flapping their wings around and jumping around the tree, and sometimes a sibling or a big gust of wind or just them jumping around too fast knocks them out of the tree, and they'll end up on the ground. Now, they're not quite ready to be on their own, but now they're down on the ground. So if you see a bird like that, it's good just to leave it there and observe the situation. Don't automatically assume that it needs assistance, because a lot of times mom will come down and she'll still be feeding it and protecting it on the ground, and she will try to get it back up the tree or tuck it under a bush where it's safe. A lot of times we tell people, if you're super concerned, like you have dogs or cats in the area and you don't want them to get a hold of it, you can scoop up the little bird and try to put it back in its nest. If you can't reach the nest, you can put it in just in the same tree where it came out of. Chances are it's just going to jump out again, because they're at that stage called branching where they're going to leave again. And they're young, so they don't know better to just stay there. But the mom and dad, especially if you see a mom and dad flying around, because we get that call a lot. Well, I just found this baby bird, but there's another bird trying to dive bomb me. And it's like, well, he's trying to tell you, please don't kidnap my baby. So it's just best to leave him there. What do you see now? Oh, an airplane. He does like to watch airplanes. I think he thinks it's like a big dinosaur bird up there. It is very impressive, huh? But with the birds, yeah, it's best just to leave them. Like I said, you can't put them back in the tree. The only time we recommend actually picking them up and taking them somewhere is if you've seen the parent be killed, like hit by a car, or you know you've watched for several hours or a day and you haven't seen a parent come back to take care of it. Then at that time, it's okay to intervene and get the bird to a rehab facility, which we do at the zoo. We get a lot of calls for that, and we try to help as many as we can. The best thing to do is wear some gloves, pick it up, get it in a box, keep it quiet and dark. Don't try to feed it. A lot of people end up feeding it the wrong things, which can actually do more damage than helping it. So just keeping them quiet, even overnight, they can make it a day or so without food and they'll be okay. But just keep it quiet, give us a call, or wherever you live, give your local rehab a call, and then get it to them and they can take it from there. Yes?
Who are their natural enemies?
For that great horned owls?
Any of the varieties?
Well, most...
Great question.
With owls, a lot of times it's another species of owl or another bird of prey that can eat them. When they're babies, they're pretty much fair game for a lot of things like foxes, raccoons, bobcats, coyotes. Human intervention we're a big predator to them because we cut down their trees, move into their areas, put out poison. Rat poison is a big one because a lot of people don't like rodents around their house, so they'll put rat poison out, which takes care of your rat problem. But then you have an owl or another bird of prey that comes and eats them, and unfortunately, it also poisons the bird. So we do get a lot of animals that are poisoned when we get them in. Did you want? Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to add especially onto the rodenticides and things like that, it brings in, of course, and tree cutting. I have to say that first because this is the great gray owl. Siren, sorry guys.
It's okay.
But that is impacted by timber industry, so their numbers are really low. And then back to the rodenticide, I actually went to school up in Humboldt County, and they are doing a project that is raptors are the solution. So instead of using rodenticide on the vineyards, they put up nesting boxes for barn owls. And this is in Napa Valley, and even they're branching out now to Lodi. So they put these boxes up for barn owls. You can kind of see the little barn owl face right there. But they use these, and then they monitor the population, monitor what they eat. I actually got to review footage of what they bring in, like lemmings, which are kind of mouse-like, or groundhogs, and things like that, so they could monitor whether barn owls were being effective enough to keep the rodents out of the vineyards. So it just goes to show that yes, sometimes we have negative impacts, like with the great gray owl, but we can encourage owls to come in and use them for our needs rather than leading to poisonings.
And are they successful at
Yes. Yes, they are. They're very, very opportune hunters. And one night I was reviewing footage, they brought in at least 5 different prey items. So they're very effective, luckily, at least for those vineyards. It might vary depending on which location or what area they're being used in, but they seem to do a great job.
All right. I guess that's it. Was there any other questions? We're good? Okay.
Okay, that concludes our owl evening. Again, a big thank you to our friends from the Big Bear Alpine Zoo and to Hooty as well.
If anybody wants to have their picture taken with him,
Oh, photo opportunities. Awesome. Come on up if you want a photo. But thank you again for joining us.